are about to experience, Jackson Snyder presents. Direct from the Vero Essene Yahad, a Hebrew Nation radio original program. JSP is a variety show seeking out Jewish and Christian origins, religion, theology and history, and doing so in a fashion that is both educational and entertaining. Welcome to Jackson Snyder Presents.
While it's possible that people, out of curiosity, wanted to look inside the ark, the reality is the Levites handling the ark were the first exposed to the pestilence, which quickly spread throughout Beth Shemesh and other parts of Israel. While 50,070 people seems a bit much, the likely number of dead was a little more closer to 5,000. It's great that these Bible article authors know more about what happened in those days than the written record in history. The aftermath of Aphek Ebenezer was two-sided. The Philistines won the land battles while the Israelites won biologically. Even though the majority of the populace and priests likely had no clue what caused the dangers in the ark. While the epidemic stopped the advancement of the Philistines temporarily, it also further weakened the Israelites and denied them any hope of attacking the weakened Philistines once the plague had subsided. Dead. Coffee makes me want to sing. Shroom, 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 shroom. Brother Shroomkoff.
Yeah.
Please bring me another cup of delicious shroom coffee.
Coming right up.
So what was the Ark of the Covenant? Was it a golden chest that served as the throne for Yahweh and had a power that is unexplainable? Or was it just a beautifully gilded box with some nasty surprises inside? It seems, based on the readings, that the Ark was nothing more than a chest designed for a political purpose, which was to unite the Israelites and give them an identity. It also served as a religious symbol. For not only was Yahweh their king, he was in fact their Elohim, and because of this, the ark served as a place to worship wherever it resided. Thirdly and lastly, it had a military function. The ark, one could say, served as Yahweh's chariot. Yahweh was their commander and Elohim of war. Moreover, like any good weapon, if it were to fall into the hands of the enemy, it could defend itself as it did against the Philistines when it unleashed a nasty plague upon them. Overall, however one looks at the ark, it all comes down to a matter of faith. Very true. And again, the article by Cam Ray. I have one more. I hope you're enjoying this. It's a lot of reading to be done, but it's good. Through this source, you find out things that you would never know any other place. And I think you get some fairly true solutions to some pretty hairy situations and mysteries. Was the Ark of the Covenant an instrument of anachronistic technological knowledge? Somewhere in the Negev Desert, Mount Sinai at the dawn on a day of the 13th century, Moses, go and speak to the children of Israel. Tell them they must make a wooden ark of acacia, its length of 2.5 cubits and its width 1.5 cubits. 13th century, 1,500 years ago. Besides the description of the Ark of the Covenant in the Bible, a volume dating to 1780, The Holy History of the Old Testament, provides interesting material for research on instruments, devices, and culture objects belonging to the Jewish tradition that, seen from a more modern perspective, would seem to suggest the existence of anachronistic technical knowledge. For the description of the ark can't help but remind one of a large-capacity electric capacitor, made up of two conductors, the gold foils inside and outside, separated by a dielectric, that is the Sittim wood, that is acacia, which can therefore be assimilated to be capable of accumulating large and sometimes dangerous quantities of static electricity. A dielectric material is a substance that is a poor conductor of electricity, but an efficient supporter of electrostatic fields. If the flow of current between opposite electric charge poles is kept to a minimum while the electrostatic lines of flux are not impeded or interrupted, an electrostatic field can store energy. In fact, from 2 Samuel, Uzzah now stretched out his hand toward the ark of the true Elohim and grabbed it. Then Yahweh's wrath flashed against Uzzah, and the true Elohim knocked him down because of the irreverent act, so that he died there near the ark. The unsuspecting Uzzah had, in fact, involuntarily tried to support the ark. Yeah, we know this whole story. He was about to topple from a cart in which David, with the help of the unfortunate Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, was transporting it to the house of Obed-Edom. The fact that he had touched the ark, probably at a point of high potential compared to the ground, had caused his body to be racked by an electric shock. Hey, he provided the grounding rod. At least that would seem to be the case from the Old Testament description.
And you have to make a cover of pure gold. And you have to make 2 cherubim of gold. You have to make cherubim on the cover at its 2 ends.
Yahweh had ordered Moses, who proceeded to have a device manufactured with 2 opposite electrodes, that is, the wings of the cherubim, having the function of discharging the static electricity accumulated by the 2 metal surfaces of gold, separated by the wood, and accordingly acting as sort of an antenna.
And therefore sure I will introduce myself to you and speak to you above the lid,
continues Yahweh, making it clear to Moses that the apparatus would act as a means of communication, an ante litteram radio, in fact, every time Moses entered the tent of the assembly to talk to him. Then he heard the voice talking to him above the lid that was on the Ark of the Covenant between the 2 cherubim, and they spoke to him. Oh. But then, why did Yahweh warn people to keep their distance from the ark? As soon as you see the Ark of the Covenant, you must follow it. Only there be a distance of 2,000 cubits between you and it. Do not approach it. Joshua 3:3. Perhaps when it worked, it generated an energy, that is, an electrostatic, which would be very dangerous for those who did not approach it with the necessary precautions, including maybe a rubber suit, or at least some kind of shoes that the static charge couldn't go through. In his book entitled Archaeology of the Impossible, A Roman Edizione 2009, must be an Italian publication, Dr. Roberto Volteri analyzes the structure of the Ark of the Covenant from an electrotechnical point of view and calculates the capacitive value, together with the probable difference in potential, that is voltage, present on the tips of the wings of the 2 cherubim. Electrostatic theory teaches that capacity, indicated by the letter C of an electric capacitor, is given by the relation C equals ER dot E0, if that's a 0, times A over D. I don't think they have that equation right in here. You know, I used to teach algebra. This does not look right. Where C is precisely the capacitive value, R is the value of the relative dielectric constant, which depends on the type of material interposed, cetim or acacia wood, between the reinforcements. 0 is the vacuum dielectric constant. A is the total surface of the 2 reinforcements facing each other, while D is the distance between them. In the case of the ark, this is the only unknown parameter. If you want the equation that they have here, then go out and watch it on YouTube. I'll try to put it on up there. I have a visual, and yes, that equation was wrong. Should be C equals E times A over D. Oh, continuing, a cubit, intended as a unit of measurement in use in the land of Israel, measured 44 centimeters thereabout. So the length of the wooden container, that is the ark, was 110 centimeters, 2 cubits and a half. Why did they say this in centimeters? Do they think that we're all in Europe? While its height and width were about 65 centimeters, that is 52 times 31 times 31 inches. A little more than 4 feet. To calculate the thickness, the value of D that is lacking. One could hypothesize that, since the ark had to be able to contain, in addition to an object not well identified, but defined only as the kavod, Elohim, the glory of God, other objects as heavy as the tablets of the Ten Commandments, and allowing for possible transportation, it should not be of a material of inferior thickness. One would suggest that the thickness of the wood should have been between 2 and 5 centimeters. If the thickness had been less, one would have obtained a higher value of capacity and perhaps electrical discharges or lightning of greater intensity. Since one now knows the measurements of the ark, one can calculate the area of the facing surface of the two conductors, the gold foils, internal, external, excluding the lid, because, as we read in Exodus 25, and you have to make a lid on it of pure gold, its length of 2.5 cubits, and its width of 1.5 cubits. Therefore, it had to be made of solid gold, and not of acacia wood, or the dielectric, covered with gold, the conductor, and not excessively influencing the total value of capacity. The 3 rectangles making up the side walls and the bottom of the wooden case measured a total of 21,450 square centimeters, while the 2 front and rear walls measured in total 8,450 square centimeters. Excluding the influence of the lid, the facing surface of the 2 conductors was given by the total of the 2 areas, now calculated 29,900 square centimeters, or about 3 square meters. Can you imagine how heavy that lid would be? It would have to be very sturdy. Replacing the known values, such as the surface useful A, dielectric constant of the vacuum 0, and dielectric constant R of the wood, no matter what it was, in addition to the assumed thickness of the wood, D, in the formula above, and express the surface, A, in square centimeters, and the distance, D, in centimeters, one would obtain, in the first approximation, low capacity, less than a microfarad.
Who would have known that you were so smart with mathematics and electronic lingo? I never knew this before.
Well, sir, neither did I. All right, so that's out. To speculate on what might have happened when Uzzah now stretched out his hand toward the ark of the true Elohim, one can assume, for example, that the ark could accumulate a quantity of electric charge, indicated with Q, equal to 1 mini-coulomb, because I hope you know what these terms mean, I don't. V, which is the difference in potential, equals Q, accumulated electrical charge, divided by C, capacitance of the capacitor. Between the armatures of the condenser, and therefore between the wings of the 2 cherubim, a difference in potential electric voltage of many thousands of volts would have to have been generated, a value more than remarkable and capable of punishing irreversibly the less cautious Uzzah. Among other things, since the electrical resistance of the human body is of the order of K ohms, say 50,000 ohms, the excessively generous Uzzah would have been hit by a current intensity, I, equal to a few amperes, certainly deadly with the right high voltage values, taking into consideration that the discharge of a simple capacitor from a few microfarads, used for the starting of the motors of household appliances, when charged to the mains voltage of only 220 volts, it could certainly hurt a lot. I must say that is quite interesting.
Do you concur?
I concur.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur.
Concur.
I concur.
Affirmative. Keep this under your hat until an announcement is made.
Personal experience, I was stapling flooring in a bathroom years ago when I had to do hard labor, and I had a 220-volt cable with a staple. Knocked me right on my arse. All the calculations made so far obviously exclude another possibility that the Ark was made up of several overlapping layers properly connected to each other, in which case the total capacity, C, would have been much greater. Ultimately, the value of electrical capacity calculated with the data provided by the Bible is not unfortunately very high, but it is enough to accumulate a considerable amount of static electricity that, when discharged to the ground through the electrical conductor consisting of the body of the unfortunate Uzzah, it could have caused considerable damage, even death. So there's a couple of pictures here, one compared to the other. One has a miniature ark with the cherubim on it, the wings pointing toward each other and leaving a gap there, and a setup with regular electronic equipment. The cherubim wings are represented as two balls sticking out from two terminals with a little gap in between, and it looks like a pretty decent electrical charge going through the wings and through the terminals. And the caption is, in a small simulacrum of the Ark, that means a model, Dr. Voltaire fired an electrical arc between the wingtips of the two cherubim using an electronic device only to simulate what may have happened dozens of centuries ago in the land of Israel. The discharge between the electrodes of a spinterometer made by the author. So that's a kind of a cool illustration. And of course, I'm going to try to get this maybe on the podcast or certainly on YouTube. I'll put it on. The psychiatrist Wilhelm Reich was born 1897 in Galicia to a family of Jewish origin, and one wonders whether his studies were inspired by biblical descriptions, and was he perhaps perfecting the apparatus described in the Old Testament on the basis of heterodox knowledge of physics. Quote, the original accumulator consists of a casing of organic material. The wall of this container is lined internally with thin iron sheet. The number of layers, each consisting of organic material on the outside and metal on the inside, can be increased. In this way, the layers can be several. So described the disputed American psychiatrist Reich in his biopathy of cancer at the end of the 1940s, the structure of his organic accumulator. This was a device, he claimed, that was able to accumulate and restore a form of energy, a biological or cosmic energy, an extension of Freud's idea of the libido, which he had discovered and which could be used in various fields, including therapeutic and as a cure for cancer. That's off the beaten track, all right, heterodox. Lay on the wings of the cherubim, have the cancer burned out of your body. In fact, neither his organic theory nor Reich himself had an easy time. The psychiatrist ended his days on November 3, 1957 in Lewisburg prison for having patented and disseminated his organic accumulators, the result of his studies in laboratories set up at his estate in Rangeley, Maine. He went to prison for this. Albert Einstein himself had taken his theories into consideration and experimented with an organic accumulator. Although he achieved results that were largely at odds with the theories of the heretical psychiatrist, examination of Reich's work shows that in the organic accumulator, electrostatic voltages could develop up to 780 volts, which are more than enough to electrocute both the unfortunate Uzzah and Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aaron. Was the Ark of the Covenant made for religious and cultural purposes only? Or was it also an instrument capable of producing intense physical effects, perhaps even therapeutic, curative ones? By now untraceable text in French by Rabbi Moke Levine, entitled Le Tabernacle cercle, enriched by an illustration of a splendid iconographic apparatus, provides more light on some objects of worship of the Jewish religion, including the Ark of the Covenant and the pectoral of the high priest, who was the only person allowed entry into the Sancta Sanctorum. Quote, "And you have to do the pectoral of judgment. It must be square when it bends in two, and you have to fill it with setting of stones, being there 4 rows of stones, a row of ruby, topaz, and emerald is the first row." Exodus 28:15. Just puts me in mind of the Babylonian battery, only a great big one.
Brother Snyder, you won't believe this, but as you was talking about that organic accumulator, I looked it up, and there is on YouTube a tutorial that you can build your own organic accumulator. Looking at it right now, easy to build orgone accumulator tutorial. It looks quite easy, actually. It's like a round Ark of Covenant. You use iron can, some kind of insulating material, and of course I'm not going to look at it right now. It's only 6-minute tutorial, but I think if we have inventors in the audience...
If we have any audience, you mean?
Oh, if there's an inventor and you want to build a small replica of this accumulator, you can do it. Just put in a search engine ORGONE, Orgone Accumulator Tutorial. Looks very simple, and when we get done today, I'm going to look this over. Maybe we give direction on here, too. Evidently, from comment, it says, questions about whether the builder seems to be experiencing any noticeable benefits, and one fellow wants to actually buy one. One fellow says, I learned that cone taper shape is giving harmful energy inside accumulator. This should be very interesting. Probably just another one of these miracle cures that you'll find on YouTube. But who knows? Take a look, and maybe we find out the secret power of Ark of Covenant.
Try not to electrocute yourself. Okay, let's get back to what we were doing. Some structures similar to the Ark, preserved in the tabernacle, narrows the attention still more to Reich's hypothesis of the organic accumulator, and may identify the Ark as more than an electric condenser of great capacity. And you will still make the bowls and jugs, the thuribles, and the cups of pure gold, so as to offer the libations, and on the table always exposed before me the loaves of the proposition. That's Exodus 25:29. There's some pretty grand illustrations here. In this one picture of the Ark of the Covenant, it's got the cherubim bowing down, facing each other, but in the bowing down, their wings are going over the top of their heads and coming into close communication with each other. I think what a little bit unfamiliar to me is that the cherubim they've been looking at each other. According to the rabbinical interpretation of Moshe Levine, Moses had another container made which was intended to contain food for priests during their rituals and other sacred objects, together with the Ark of the Covenant covered with gold from all sides, in which were a golden jar containing the manna and the rod of Aaron that germinated, and the tablets of the covenant. Hebrews 9:4.
Is it worth considering that maybe the accumulated libido or energy inside the organic accumulator could have activated Aaron's rod to bring forth out of it a bud or branch that came out in very short time? Evidently, the inventor thought that this could be of some type of use for medical science. It's not electricity, it's not chemical, it's some other life force that we just don't know or has not been identified any further than that.
You have been listening to Jackson Snyder Presents on Hebrew Nation Radio.